Hello and welcome to this special interview. With me is Mr. Piyush Goyal, Union Minister of India, or should I say Bharat, sir. Welcome to Firstpost.
Thank you. Pleasure to be on your show, Palki ji.
It's an honor to have you. And let me start with a word of congratulations. India has just closed its G20 presidency on a high, at least the Leaders' Summit, and we had everyone, all sides agree to a joint statement. You have passed a cabinet resolution hailing the success of the G20. Are you satisfied with the outcomes?
It truly is very, very satisfying, very, very encouraging to see the trust that India during its G20 presidency has been able to earn from leaders across all sides of the fence. Very different viewpoints were on offer. It was a difficult time. Most people had given up hope on an outcome document. I think it was very deft handling on the part of the Honorable Prime Minister and the team which was working on it. And clearly a matter of great satisfaction that what we had set out to achieve when the presidency came to India, making it a people's G20, Jan Bhagidari, get everybody involved, get the nation feel connected to an important event like this, and come up with outcomes which demonstrate to the world that India cares for not only our 140 crore Indians, but for the entire world. I think that message has gone down very, very strongly from this presidency.
Yes, and like I was telling you, the Brazilian president, Brazil is the next chair, and they said they're taking lessons from India. You mentioned Jan Bhagidari. It truly was a people's event. And the people have one question in mind. How did you make it happen? You served as the G20 Sherpa in 2021. And while we see the decisions come out, we're all curious to know what goes into, forging that consensus. How do you achieve something like this?
When we got the presidency on 1st of December last year, the situation was somewhat like what we hear of in the Charles Dickens book, A Tale of Two Cities. On the one hand, the times were good. On the other hand, the times were full of despair, difficult times. And the situation was challenging. We had barely come out of COVID. The war was still raging on. The East and the West were highly polarized, divided. And clearly, the G20 was addressing the challenges of a broken world order. At that point of time, for India to present such an ambitious agenda, which talked about the entire world coming together, which talked about the world addressing the needs of a long awaited better deal for the less developed countries, the developing countries, particularly in the global south. A world which was looking for inclusive and sustainable solutions, yet was conscious that it's a very, very different level of development that we see in different parts of the world, which means we have to be more accommodative, we have to try and come up with balanced and equitable solutions. So there were a lot of challenges, and in some sense, you get the best out of Prime Minister Modi when there is a challenge on hand. And we saw that happening in the G20. He led from the front. He was really on the front foot through the Indian G20 presidency.
So I see the vision was definitely there, and I think everyone who's observed the events over the last few months see that. The Indian side spared no effort. But was the confidence always there? Because you also chaired a meeting in August where I understand that China and Russia opposed to a paragraph on the war in Ukraine. And even till the very last moment, there was a doubt that there may not be a joint statement. So within the team, I want to know, was there, once in a while, was there a lack of confidence? Did you guys worry? What did you tell the Prime Minister and what was his response to you?
Modi hai to mumkin hai. By and large, we were always very confident that there will be significant outcomes at the ministerial level during the ministerial meetings. Also, if you will observe, we moved from just a chair's summary to a chair's summary and an outcome document collectively, so that the disagreements were literally left to a para or two around the conflict in Ukraine. Well, I think most people did have their doubts until the very end, until the morning of the first day of the summit. And historically also, usually the leaders' declaration would get thrashed out only an hour or half an hour before the final leaders' summit. I was G20 Sherpa at Rome in 21. And we were able to iron out all the differences about half an hour or 45 minutes before the final leaders' summit. And that too, when there was no war in Ukraine. There was no geopolitical tension as it exists today. But to pull it off on day one, pull off such a substantive document with probably 112 outcomes, a document which also addresses the conflict in Ukraine, satisfying both sides of the, with different viewpoints, both sides of the conflict, and coming up with a hugely powerful agenda which demonstrates, particularly to the less developed countries, that the G20 cares for them, more so with the African Union now becoming a part of the G20. We have truly crossed every expectation that anybody had. But I must say that with Prime Minister Modi there, we all felt, kuch to karenge, kuch to chamatkar.
Was it the Friday night meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Biden that tilted the scales in India's favor? Because it was said that President Biden would be able to bring the Western camp along.
I don't think it's any one event, because after all, there were very many differing points of view. But I must say, I also engage with many Sherpas, I also engage with many senior functionaries from different countries. Across the board, there was unanimity on one thing, certainly, that everybody wanted to make the Indian G20 presidency a success. On that, there was unanimity. By and large, everybody was keen to go that extra mile, because they all wanted to demonstrate their trust in India and the friendship with Prime Minister Modi.
Yes, the world has seen the American way, the world has seen the Chinese way. You could say the world is now trying to understand the Indian way of doing diplomacy and engaging with with neighbors and others. But on the point of the African Union, it seems that while the West talks about inclusion, India has shown how it is done. Is this also going to reflect in our policy moves, because our vision for engagement with Africa does not match our diplomatic presence and actual engagement at this point? So are we going to see a shift?
I think you will see a shift. And the shift is not going to start today, it's going to continue into the future. If you will see over the last 9 years, the number of engagements India has had with Africa, including inviting all the 55 African countries for an India-Africa summit in New Delhi. The amount of visits that Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji has made to different parts of Africa. In many countries, visits by an Indian Prime Minister or head of state or head of government happened after decades to different parts of Africa. He would painstakingly make an extra effort in his outreach to Africa, including when he came back from America. I think he stopped by in Egypt and had very, very intense discussions with Egypt. I think this has been a continuing effort over 9 years of giving them comfort that India stands with them. It has been increasing engagement at all levels and wanting to hear their side of the story, wanting to understand how we can expand trade with them, caring to be responsive to their needs. I think that was a first, and a lot of such firsts have all culminated in the final G20 gesture that Prime Minister Modi has offered them.
And when it wrapped up, I want to know what was your feeling? Was it a feeling of relief कि सब ठीक हो गया? Was it a feeling of maybe some pressure that the next time you have to do something, you'll have to do it even bigger, and for you even more than others, because you were also instrumental in the creation of Bharat Mandapam as we saw it?
Well, I can certainly tell you that khatam nahi hua hai. We still have 2.5 months of our presidency, and we have already got our homework to start working in for the next 2.5 months. 75 days is a long period of time, and we have our work cut out. We still have to start delivering. The Indian presidency is not looking at these outcomes to be filed away for future reference. Every single one of the items that we have discussed, debated, and worked on through the year, whether at the ministerials, whether at the engagement groups, or in the final Leaders Summit, are all action agenda for all of us, is work that we all have to pursue. And I can assure you this is going to be taken as seriously as, for example, we take our manifesto, as we take any cabinet decision, as we take any budget announcement.
How does the Delhi Declaration and the conversations you've had, especially over the past few days, how does it impact India's bilateral engagements with partners, especially on trade? Because we've seen a lot of focus on trade deals lately, and over the weekend we saw two in particular, the UK and Saudi Arabia. Which are the areas or regions we're focusing on to push for deals like these?
I think the biggest achievement of the entire G20 presidency has been trust. And this is going to hold us in good stead as we expand our bilateral engagements with different countries or different regions. Opening up trade and investment dialogue with different countries will help India grow faster, will help India provide opportunities to our young boys and girls, will help our startups, will help our MSMEs, will help our farmers with greater business potential for food processing or export of agri products. And therefore, I think bilateral trading arrangements or economic partnerships that we are pursuing with the UK, also with the EU, the 27 nation bloc of EU, who is our second largest trading partner after the United States, our very active engagement with the EFTA countries, Switzerland, Norway, Liechtenstein and Iceland, our very active involvement with IPEF, the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, where the United States is the lead. The potential that we see in the Middle East, particularly since the Middle East we have seen after our successful CEPA negotiations with UAE, also opens up doors for Africa and Eastern Europe. We also were in a dialogue with Canada, which for some time we are looking at to we've given it a pause to see how we need to take it forward going forward.
Why is that, if I may ask?
There's several reasons. We need to make sure that geopolitically and economically we are all on the same page. And therefore, the pause on the Canada discussions.
Are we not on the same page with Canada?
We are on good page, but we have had certain issues which are of serious concern. They have been highlighted in the bilateral meeting that the Honourable Prime Minister had with the Prime Minister of Canada, and we are hoping for resolution of some of these issues before we take it forward. So you will see that we have a very vast array of negotiations underway. In fact, most teams in the Commerce Ministry are actually doing two-shift working, a morning negotiation with one and another in the evening. And you really need to be very sharply focused on each negotiation because you are crystal gazing into 30, 40, 50 years into the future.
So when you strike a trade deal, what are the key considerations? Is it visas? Is it market access? What are the sort of boxes that you have to tick?
Well, a trade deal doesn't address immigration issues. Immigration is looked at by the Foreign Ministry through their mobility
but in terms of more
partnerships.
access for people to be able to work and...
When it comes to provision of services, which is a part of the trade deal, or for ensuring greater market access for services and goods, Certainly, movement of people also matters, and we do discuss how it will become more seamless to get business persons visas to provide the service or to provide the merchandise trade more impetus. But I would like to say that trade deals today, in today's context, are less about one or two issues. They are now very multifaceted. A trade deal basically gives a message of friendship, gives a message to businesses that yes, the lines are open between the two countries. A trade deal also very often covers an investment potential. A trade deal also looks at many other areas to attract businesses to each other. For example, intellectual property rights. We look at what we can do to make logistics more seamless, how we can do paper work between the two countries easier to promote ease of doing business. So I think trade deals today have gone far beyond the traditional goods and services access to comprehensive economic partnerships.
I asked about visas because I understand that was one of the sticking points when we were talking to London, and reports say that the UK Prime Minister will be back in India next month possibly to wrap this up. How positive are you? What is the time frame you're looking at?
I think one must understand that visas are of two kinds. One is immigration and one is temporary. Immigration doesn't come under the purview of any trade deal, and that was the misunderstanding that I think got accentuated last year when there was some mix-up between whether immigration was going to be opened up between India and UK. Neither is it on the table, neither has India asked for it, and neither are we looking to send all our talent out of India. What we are looking for is that business becomes smoother and provision of services on both sides gets seamless mobility also. Those are through temporary visas, and I think on temporary visas, obviously there will be a dialogue how bridge can be created between different trading partners to ensure that when we are looking at opening up services amongst each other, we'll also have to ensure that the person can enter into each other's territory to provide those services.
It is said that London needs it more than New Delhi. So would you say that we are on course to signing it this year?
No agreement can ever be executed unless it's fair, equitable, balanced, and a win-win for both countries. So I don't think it's about London needing it more or India needing it more. It will only happen when both of us find the right balance, both of us feel it's in the best interest of our economies, and when collectively we can support each other's economies to prosper.
With Saudi Arabia, India set a very ambitious target. You want to double bilateral trade to $100 billion. Which are the areas that you're looking at to expand this partnership?
While we are looking at doubling it to 100 billion, we are also looking at bringing more balance to the trade, which is currently, of course, skewed in their favor because of oil imports into the country. We are looking also at large amounts of capital inflows in terms of investment potential that India offers for Saudi investments to earn good returns and help India in its development journey.
Is India open for business for Chinese investors?
Well, India is open for business for all investors across the world. We are fair to all countries. We would only like to make sure that we get reciprocal access, reciprocal benefits. We'd like to make sure that strategically India's interests are not compromised, and therefore India is a little cautious when it comes to investments from all our land bordering countries, whether it's China or any other land bordering country. We are looking at a little more cautious, calibrated approach.
After the border standoff in 2021, India has sort of reassessed its trade relationship with China. We banned hundreds of Chinese apps since 2021. According to the data I have, 58 FDI applications from China have been rejected. What are the major concerns with respect to business with China?
I think the apps were more out of security concerns. It was not a trade issue, and neither was the Trade Department or Commerce Ministry involved in that decision. It was a security concern which was addressed by the concerned departments. In terms of the FDI applicants, I think India is looking to make sure that strategic sectors, particularly those which are related to our own effort to be to have resilient supply chains, or to make sure that at any point of time we are not put in a tight spot as we were during COVID when supply lines were disrupted. India is making a conscious effort to become self-reliant in strategic sectors, and maybe for that reason I wouldn't know the exact contours of each of these cases, but it would be a collective decision by different departments of the government of India.
She was saying this is not unique to China, although China is a unique case. It's the sheer size of the economy, and well, there are concerns with neighbors, but Bangladesh is not the same as a China or a Sri Lanka or even a Pakistan. So,
well, I think India never differentiates based on a single country or any particular individual situation. We take a very balanced and a very non-discriminatory approach, and even in this case our approach has been very non-discriminatory.
You've also been a critic of RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, and it is being seen as a China-led trade alliance, and you've said in the past, and I'm quoting, it is not a partnership among equals. Why do you think so?
Well, when I assessed the RCEP discussions, I realized that originally India was never supposed to be a part of RCEP. It was amongst the ASEAN region, China, New Zealand, Australia, Japan and Korea. To date, I have not been able to figure out why India got into the whole RCEP negotiations. हमें कूद पड़ने के लिए क्या जरूरत पड़ी? Ever since the UPA came into power in 2004, I don't know what happened. What were those secret understandings? What were those MOUs about which we still don't know much? That suddenly the imports from China started shooting up, and that surge is unbelievable. Until 2004, I think our trade deficit with China was probably $1.5 billion. And by 2014, in one decade, it shot up to by nearly 33 times. I've never ever heard of any two countries' trade resulting in a trade deficit which is 33 times, 33x. Of course, since governments are in continuity, when we came into power in 14, we continued to negotiate, but we had many disagreements with China on many issues. Between June and October, we made a sincere effort to understand the China-India partnership. We kept offering to China many remedies or many ways in which they could earn our trust. I remember a conversation where my Chinese counterpart and I were having tea and trying to resolve some differences. And I said, okay, we are both having tea on this teacup. My problem is that our cost of raw material of this teacup in India is more than the finished product cost that I find landed in India. That's a mystery to me, and which is why I said that it's a very unequal partnership. I said I fail to understand how this can happen. So I made him an offer. I said, okay, let's do like whatever you send to India, whatever imports come into India, should we have a doubt or a suspicion about the pricing, you certify from the government that the money that's received for that product in your books is exactly the same as the money that's been remitted from India. And no subsidies, no extraneous transactions are involved in it. And he said, no, we can't do that. Whatever you want to do at your border, you do. But we will not open ourselves to transparent trading practices. And that was one of those very important inflection points when I realized that this is clearly trade between two unequals that don't believe in transparent and open rules-based trading systems the way we do and the way the rest of the world likes to work. RCEP was effectively an FTA between China and India, and it would have killed domestic industry. And out of my 200 odd stakeholder meetings, many led by me, many by my secretary, by my officials, and my concluding meetings with industry and exporters and businesses as a whole, including the MSME sector, the farm sector, very clearly demonstrated there were no takers for RCEP. And the Honorable Prime Minister had the courage of conviction to stand up on 4th of November in Bangkok, I think it was, where he took the very bold call which stunned the world.
So clearly there are concerns, and you said that for whatever reasons post-2004 trade with China surged. How much of that have you been able to undo? Your government has been in power for the past 9 years, and as of the last financial year, we were still importing shipments worth $98 billion from China. So why have we not been able to reduce that dependence on Chinese imports?
Palki ji, as I said, the imports from China went up many fold in that 10-year period. In our period, it has only gone up 2x from what we inherited in our first year, which was legacy of what we got. We were at $48 billion of imports already. Now, the decoupling is a long-drawn process. You don't decouple overnight. Particularly in an economy which is the world's fastest growing large economy like India, with 1.4 billion Indians. 1.4 billion Indians aspiring for a better quality of life. The demand obviously in India for goods and services is high. And over the years, we've seen so many products coming in from China. It's a long drawn process to now create enough domestic capabilities and capacity. It's a process to introduce high quality standards to make sure we get good quality products coming into India. And that process is going on very significantly at very fast pace, because of which I think we've been able to promote domestic investments, promote domestic manufacturing. Otherwise, the same import figure, if I was to juxtapose what was happening prior to 2014, would have been far higher.
You've also signed what is being called the new spice route, the India, West Asia, Europe trade corridor. We hear of such announcements being made. For instance, last year, the G7 announced a $600 billion project for lower and middle income countries, and then it has not seen the light of the day because of financing issues. So where do you expect to get the funding for this, is A, and B, is this a challenge to China's BRI?
As far as the first question is concerned, largely this is being fleshed out in greater detail, but it is going to be financed by each of the countries along the way to support this endeavor. And we also have Europe and the United States very seriously committed to this, because opening up of this corridor all the way from Southeast Asia to Europe really is one step in the direction of an interconnected world. So I think this is a very natural fit, unlike some of the other efforts that were made in the past, which were more geopolitical than for the good of all the participating countries. What we have done is a win-win for all the participants. Everybody stands to benefit.
Both India and US are entering election season, and one of the key players in America has started talking. His name is Donald Trump, and he's complaining about India's tariffs again. For some reason, he's been talking about Harley-Davidsons for years now, and last month he threatened to slap reciprocal tax on India if he's voted back to office. He said, and I'm quoting, "India is probably the nation with the highest tariffs in the world." What do you make of statements like these?
Two things. One, he has been president in the past and we have worked with him. So I'm sure as more dialogue happens and more understanding happens, he will realize we are really not the highest tariff country in the world. Point one. Point two, in many ways, India has opened up its business through promoting bilateral agreements, also by ensuring that high technology products get free flow and lower tariffs. There are certain areas where we do have tariffs, but so has the United States. I mean, peanut butter in America has exorbitant tariffs. So every country protects certain very critical, sensitive, politically sensitive areas through tariffs or through other measures. And I think all this needs is more dialogue and debate and discussion and a deeper understanding which will resolve this matter.
As of July this year, India has 19 free trade pacts in place, but India's utilization rate, according to the Asian Development Bank, is below 25%, which is among the lowest in Asia. Why do you think we've not been able to unlock the full potential of these deals?
I think Indian businesses have such a great demand and such a huge business potential in India that traditionally Indian businesses would not look overseas or would not look at going international very easily. The cozy comfort of a large domestic demand itself was big business for India. You might have observed in the last 2 or 3 years, the Honorable Prime Minister has led from the front an initiative to connect government, business and opportunities. And only in the last 2 years, post-COVID, our international trade has gone up by 55% in 2 years. It's almost history in the making. Now Indian businesses are coming of age. They're recognizing that if India has to be a developed nation, we'll have to go really long on international trade. We'll have to expand our international frontiers. We'll have to start engaging with the world from a position of strength and offering high quality, competitively priced goods and services to the world. 2 years have been very good. There are challenges in store, particularly with the Ukraine war continuing to disrupt markets and also discretionary spending taking a hit post almost now 18 months of war. We are grappling with challenges, but we are confident that we'll emerge winner.
The world is looking at diversifying supply chains, and most international companies are adopting a policy of China plus one, which is seen as an opportunity for India. And at the same time, there are other players like Thailand and Vietnam. They offer similar deals, similar advantages. They're vying for the same market. What is India's strategy?
Frankly, China plus one is a very popular terminology. Then you have anything but China, then you have friendshoring and nearshoring. All of these have been in public domain for quite some time now. And I do recognize that India also benefits when people are looking for trusted partners, looking for rules-based, transparent economic systems where they feel confident that they, and safer also. No Indian businessman disappears in the middle of the night for months and then comes out as a professor. But I think today, and more particularly after this G20 presidency, India has changed the rules of the game. The narrative is now very much different. India on its own stream, India on its own legs, today goes from a position of strength with self-confidence and engages with the rest of the world, invites investments, invites businesses to come and work in India. And I think it will no more be a diversification strategy. It will not necessarily be only about resilient supply chains. India will now become a compulsive destination. India will become the need of the hour. More and more companies are recognizing that the democracy, the demographic dividend and the diversity, the 3 Ds that India offers. We have become an aspirational society, a young aspirational India which is going to drive and power India on its own stream. We will become the pole around which world economies will want to work and engage.
You wear many hats as a minister. You're in charge of 3 ministries: Commerce and Industry, Textile and Consumer Affairs. How would you define and describe your role in the Modi government?
I think the Modi government epitomizes the whole of the government approach. And all of us are working as a team, each one with different responsibilities. So the G20, for example, has been a great test and success story of this whole of the government approach. In this case now, it's transcended from the whole of the government to the whole of the people or whole of the nation approach. And for me, I think I'm a cog in that wheel, in that whole government that's working towards taking welfare, towards taking a brighter future for our future generations, taking progress and prosperity to the last man at the bottom of the pyramid.
I can only say that sounds like a lot of work, and I can attest to the fact that your team works very long hours. I've seen that firsthand. Thank you very much, sir, for taking all the questions and for all your time and for sharing your perspectives with us. And once again, congratulations.
Thank you very much, Palki ji.
A first-of-a-kind sports show that's played on a different turf. A first-of-a-kind sports show that will always come up with a winner. Are you looking for perspectives that go beyond the scoreline? Hi, I'm Rupa Ramani, and catch a 360-degree view of the sporting world with me here on Firstpost in our special Firstpost.